Hi, W131. I know for the last 8 weeks, your lessons have been lessons that you've read to yourself. For the next few weeks, what I'd like to do is run your lessons as a series of videotape PowerPoint slides. And the reason is that the things that I need to teach you are things that are easier to demonstrate visually than to describe in writing. So, for this particular lesson, we're going to be talking about how to prepare to write your third essay. In particular, what you want to aim for when writing your thesis. What you'll see on the first slide is that I have a list of things that you need to do in order to prepare to write your third essay. First, you need to read the articles that we've been reading in class. Then I would suggest talking about your ideas with your classmates, with myself, with other professors. You want to talk about the prompt and the readings to make sure that you understand them and that you have a sort of complex grasp of of the issue that is under consideration. Then I'd like for you to free write for at least 5 minutes, although of course if you'd like to write for longer, that's fine. Then you're going to need to create a thesis. And once you've created your thesis, you want to come up with 2 to 3 reasons to defend it. And then finally, once you create those reasons, you're going to go back through the articles that we've read and you're going to gather together evidence in the form of quotes and paraphrases in order to support those reasons. Now, what you'll notice is that we've already actually completed several of these tasks. We've read the articles. We've also been talking about the articles in class on our discussion boards. And let's just suppose, for the sake of argument here, that you've already done your free write. That would take us to the next task, which would be creating a thesis. And that's actually what I'd like to focus on today. So I have a few tips for writing the thesis for essay 3. And the first one is to use the They Say, I Say templates as a jumping off point for your thesis. By that, I mean that, I want you to echo the language and the kinds of academic moves that the They Say, I Say templates encourage. But I would avoid a simple thesis that says something like, I agree with X, or I disagree with X. I agree with Sessions, or I disagree with Sessions. And the reason why is that I want you to create a thesis that examines the issue in a more complex and nuanced way. The second tip is to avoid generalities and cliches, and this also relates to the first one. By that, what I mean is, I want you to avoid sort of simplistic thinking about the issue. I want you to think about the nuance, the complexities that go ahead or that are implicit in these prompts. So, for example, what I do not want to see is a thesis that says something like, I agree with the notion of free speech, or um, I believe that free speech is a fundamental US value. The reason that I would suggest avoiding those kinds of things is that those are cliches. We know that free speech is a fundamental value. What you want to be looking for instead is being able to say something about free speech, being able to understand some of the issues that go along with free speech, not just sort of agree with the general sentiment about free speech. And the third tip is to think of your thesis as a roadmap, which means that you'll want to explain within the course of your thesis what you'll be demonstrating to your readers in the course of your argument. So I've come up with a sample thesis to show you the kinds of theses that I might be looking for. I'll go ahead and read it to you. It reads, I am of two minds about Jeff Sessions' comment. On the one hand, he rightfully articulates that the goal of higher education is to encourage vigorous debate in the service of creating knowledge. On the other hand, he erroneously castigates universities as shelters for fragile egos, thereby ignoring the realities of college students and campus life. So, a couple of things to think about within this thesis. What you'll notice is that I have actually adopted the stance that is implicit in one of the They Say, I Say movements. I've decided to agree and disagree. I have adopted some of the template, but I haven't sought to create a kind of generalization. Instead, what I'm trying to do is to think through the complexity of the prompt, which is part of why I chose the agree disagree movement or strategy, is that I thought it would allow me to speak about multiple sides of the issue of free speech. The other thing that you'll notice is that the way that my thesis is worded, it will make a kind of roadmap for my paper, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. What you'll see on the left-hand side of the slide is the sample thesis. What you'll see on the right-hand side is a pretend paper outline. So the first box shows an introduction because all papers begin with an introduction. The second box that you see is part of the first section of my paper. And that section would actually correspond to the first point that I make in my thesis, which is, on the one hand, he rightfully articulates that the goal of higher education is to encourage vigorous debate in the service of creating knowledge. Now, that section could be as short as a sentence or two if I wanted to wrap it within a larger discussion, or it could be as long as a paragraph or more, depending on how much I want to jump into that issue. But nonetheless, that point will be discussed in the course of my paper. Now we'll take a look at the second slide. Again, on the left-hand side, you'll see the sample thesis. On the right-hand side, you'll see the outline. So we have the introduction. We have next a section that will discuss that first point, the one that starts on the one hand. Then the next section down is going to actually discuss the second point of the thesis, the one that reads, on the other hand, he erroneously castigates universities as shelters for fragile egos, thereby ignoring the realities of college students and campus life. Now, this section will discuss my second point, obviously. It again can be as long or as short a section as I would like for it to be. For the purposes of my sample paper, which I'm going to be writing in the next lesson, I'm probably going to just focus most of my paragraphs on this point, because this is where I feel like I have a lot of reasons to support what it is that I'm trying to say. The final thing that I want to point out about this sample thesis is that you'll notice that it doesn't speak in generalities. It really kind of delves into some pieces of the issue. And the second thing is that it's fairly specific. So by that, I mean that I don't just say I'm of two minds about Jeff Sessions' comment. On the one hand, I agree with his point, but on the other hand, I think there's some problems. I'm actually stating precisely what it is that I agree with and precisely what it is that I don't agree with. All right, hopefully this has shed a little bit of light on how you can begin to write a thesis for that third essay. If you'd like, if you have questions, or if you'd like to learn more about this, please feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to, to meet with you to discuss either thesis writing in general or to discuss your thesis for essay 3. All right, thank you very much, and I will see you in the next lesson.